Good evening. Welcome to the September 12th edition of the Downers Grove Village Council meeting. If you're here with us in chambers tonight, welcome, Village Hall. If you're watching on TV, welcome as well. As is our custom, we'll begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Rosa, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Barnett,
Here.
Commissioner Jose,
Here.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit,
Here.
Commissioner Gilmartin,
Here.
Commissioner Glover,
Here.
Commissioner Tully, Commissioner Davenport.
Here.
Commissioner Tully had planned to attend electronically tonight, but had a change of plans beyond his control, and so he will not be with us this evening. We go to item 3 on our agenda, proclamations. We have a proclamation this evening concerning National Preparedness Month. Whereas National Preparedness Month is an observance each September, which is designed to raise awareness about the importance of preparing for disasters and emergencies that could happen at any time. Whereas the Village of Downers Grove is not immune to tornadoes, floods, power outages, heat waves, blizzards, deep freezes, pandemics, and other disasters, both natural and man-made. Whereas the Federal Emergency Management Agency's theme for 2023 is Take Control in 1, 2, 3, and focuses on preparing older adults for disasters, specifically encouraging 3 essential steps: assessing needs, creating a plan, and engaging a support network. Whereas older adults have been identified as facing greater risks when it comes to the multitude of extreme weather events and emergencies that are now faced, especially if they are living alone, are low income, have a disability, or live in a rural area. Whereas FEMA remains committed to putting people first and reaching communities where they live. Whereas emergency preparedness is the responsibility of every citizen, and when individuals take responsibility for preparing their families and their communities, the chance of survival and return to normalcy following a disaster are greatly increased. Whereas National Prepared Month is also an opportunity to pay tribute to our first responders, including local law enforcement officers, firefighters, paramedics, and the public works professionals who, when properly trained and equipped, have the greatest potential to save lives and limit casualties after a disaster or other large-scale emergency. Now therefore, I, Robert T. Barnett, Mayor of the Village of Downers Grove, do hereby proclaim September 2023 as National Preparedness Month in the Village of Downers Grove, and encourage all citizens, families, organizations, civic group, religious institutions, and businesses to visit ready.gov and FEMA.gov as guides in developing their own emergency preparedness plans, working together to create a more prepared and resilient society. And I encourage all citizens to find and take opportunities to thank those members of our law enforcement community, firefighting, emergency medical, and public works professionals that stand always prepared to serve our community. Dated this 12th day of September 2023, Downers Grove, Illinois. Item 4 on our agenda is the mayor's report. The first item on the mayor's report is a resolution appointing members to village boards and commissions. Rosa, could you read that?
Yes. Whereas Mayor Barnett has made the following appointments to village boards and commissions. Now therefore be it resolved that the Village Council of the Village of Downers Grove does hereby confirm the following appointments. Board of Fire and Police Commissioners. Appoint Samuel Slaw to a 3-year term expiring August 31st, 2026. Community Events Commission. Reappoint DJ Fiore to a 3-year term expiring August 31st, 2026. Reappoint Nicole Zidlowski to a 3-year term expiring August 31st, 2026. And reappoint John Aguzzino to a 3-year term expiring August 31st, 2026. Environmental Concerns Commission, reappoint Jim Watson to a 3-year term expiring August 31st of 2026, and reappoint Philip Bolton to a 3-year term expiring August 31st of 2026. Historic Preservation and Design Review Board, reappoint Bill Disniski to a 3-year term expiring August 31st, 2026. Reappoint Amy Gasson as chair to a 3-year term expiring August 31st of 2026. Appoint Mary Purcell to a 2-year term expiring August 31st of 2025. And appoint Leonard Ververs to a 1-year term expiring August 31st, 2024. Human Service Commission, appoint Eric Donnelly to a 3-year term expiring August 31st of 2026, and appoint Adrian Culver to a 3-year term expiring August 31st, 2026. Liquor Commission, reappoint Bill Fenton to a 3-year term expiring August 31st of 2026. Reappoint Abby Shaw to a 3-year term expiring August 31st, 2026. Reappoint Vicky Matra to a 3-year term expiring August 31st of 2026. Appoint Yamili Saucedo to a 1-year term expiring August 31st of 2024, and appoint Rob Johnson as chair. Plan Commission, appoint Viral Patel to a 3-year term expiring August 31st of 2026. Stormwater and Floodplain Oversight Committee, reappoint Scott Bobo to a 3-year term expiring August 31st of 2026. Appoint Joe Helleron to a 3-year term expiring August 31st of 2026. Transportation and Parking Commission, reappoint Tara O'Malley to a 3-year term expiring August 31st of 2026. Appoint Alec Gazel to a 2-year term expiring August 31st of 2025. Appoint Elaine McKenzie to a 3-year term expiring August 31st of 2026. Zoning Board of Appeals, reappoint Stephen Frost to a 3-year term expiring on August 31st of 2026, and appoint John Healy, Jr. to a 3-year term expiring on August 31st of 2026. And lastly, Library Board of Trustees, reappoint Marty Sladak to a 6-year term expiring August 31st of 2029. My apologies if I pronounced any of the names incorrectly.
Yeah, you drew the short straw tonight, thank you. Is there a motion concerning that resolution?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt the resolution as presented.
Second.
I just wanted to say thank you to my colleagues for your help in this process. As Rosa read that long list, we have lots of applicants for lots of positions, and it is not easy to just try and line those up. So I have a process which is maybe not always super smooth, but tries to include everybody and give everybody a chance to be part of it. And our residents, thank you to you for volunteering and being willing to participate. Any additional comments from the council? Rose, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit?
Aye.
Commissioner Davenport?
Aye.
Commissioner Glover?
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin?
Aye.
Mayor Barnett?
Aye. That passes 6-0. Thanks again. Before we go further in our meeting, I have another item I wanted to touch base on with the team here tonight under the mayor's report. Dave, could you pop that slide up? So we have embarked on a process of trying to get way more done than we have in the past, which is a good thing. I think it's something everybody wants to do, and I think it's something all of our residents, frankly, are expecting us to find a way to do. But I want to bring something to our attention that I think we need to sort of talk about with each other here, with each other for our residents to see and hear and understand. If you look at that list, for instance, that is a get out of the gates and start rolling kind of thing based on the list of items that we said we wanted to start on. But here's one of the catches to the whole thing. Between now and December 2nd, 2 months from now, we have exactly one meeting where we will all be present. That is not unusual. That is a function of family commitments, business commitments, any number of things. But what it means in light of the sort of the plan and the ideas that we laid out in terms of how we were going to proceed is something that I think we just need to all look at each other and agree to. Because there will be situations where, for instance, somebody is not able to participate in a discussion. And we have had situations where it was really important that we hear what each other had to say about things because it informed each other's decisions. It made us think about things a new way. So we could, what we have done in the past, which I want to just reiterate to everyone, is we have tried to manage this in a way that caused council members to be able to attend those meetings where there were either situations that were particularly controversial, either within the council or within the community, or on subjects for which they had a very deep personal interest, because those vary too. If we are to continue that, which frankly is my preference, it necessarily means, at least in the next 2 months, a slowing much differently than what we'd expected a week or two ago in terms of trying to get out of the gate. Just to give you a couple ideas and examples, if you look at that list, there are 2 subjects up there, video gaming and Fairview Avenue, which I think everybody up here is pretty interested in. I think everybody would like to have their say, would like to not only have their say, but their vote. And if we were to just walk a plan forward, that would not happen. There would be people that weren't part of that conversation. So I want to raise this before we get too far down the road, because now I know at least schedules for some of us through about mid-November. It can be an issue, and it is part of the equation. Commissioner Tully tonight, had planned to be on speakerphone, and of course he's not. I'd like to say I set that up as an example, but I didn't. The airlines did that to us. Ideas that we've tried in the past about things like, we'll just add another meeting. There are lots of things that people, all of us and all of our staff, sort of set in place because they expect that 4th Tuesday to be free. Just as a for example, Human Services Commission meets on the 4th Tuesday. So Village Manager Fieldman is the liaison to that group. So those meetings are planned. Now, they don't always meet, like every other board and commission, but if they do, that's when they're planned to meet. So saying something as simple as, well, we'll just add a 4th Tuesday, it isn't that simple. It's not impossible. None of this is impossible, but I want us to talk a little bit more about what our expectations are, because if we just keep going forward, we're going to miss some things. If we follow the past practice of trying to manage those agendas to include everyone, then we will also extend this process. So now's as good a time as any. There's the list of agenda items. December 2nd is our first meeting when everybody's here. So, any thoughts? Kind of the Debbie Downer comment of the evening, huh? Mike?
I plan on being at all of the meetings, so I prefer that we just march forward. I mean, and if there was a meeting that I couldn't attend, I wouldn't expect that everything would get rearranged because I can't be there. So there's certainly a way for people to let everyone know ahead of time if you can't be there, to share to share your thoughts with the rest of the council. But I think in the interest of time, we need to march forward. We stay on our schedule and do what we can do. And I recognize that could mean that, for instance, maybe you brought up video gaming. If a vote occurred on a night that one of the positive votes wasn't here, that means that maybe I lose. I get it, but I think we need to move forward in the interest of time, and we've got a lot to handle. So
I want to remind everybody that we're not talking about just votes here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of this is
discussion.
the conversation that happens. When we function, which is what we seem to be setting ourselves up for as kind of an ad hoc committee on the comp plan in particular, there will be dialogues that we engage with in each other. Take Fairview, for instance, where the subjects in there, zoning, uses, and boundaries. We're going to have a couple of conversations, which at least in theory would give our staff enough information to have an understanding of where we are and present something for us to specifically consider voting on. I'm kind of sitting here thinking, I can't imagine we want to do those things with 4 or 5 people, yet that's where we're setting up right now. So, Chris?
Yeah, so I guess question I have is, this seems unusual. I know you kind of said that this kind of thing happens. This amount of absence seems unusual to me based on my last 2 years of experience. One person here and there has been it. Sounds like now we're in a position where, and I'll say I'm at least 1, maybe 2 of those absences as well. I think the idea of looking, since we sort of have the schedule mapped out where people are going to be absent, sounds like people know they're going to be absent. To me, I would look to add another meeting, or at least query everyone to see what availability might be on that 4th Tuesday, And if we'd rather have 7 than we have 6 or 5 a night, and we switch it, much like we did, I think recently, we did a special meeting where we skipped the 3rd Tuesday and went to the 4th Tuesday because of availability. I'm open to that. I'm certainly would have to open my calendar for the next couple of months, but it just feels unusual. And again, I'm part of that. It's not a criticism of anybody, but I would just commit to making myself available whenever I could. And I guess I would want to maybe understand that a little bit more, and then the slotting of these items, I feel like could be shifted a bit based on that. I'm not sure where this order came from in terms of items.
That's not an order per se.
Oh,
It's just the stuff. that's
Well,
on
or
the-
even just in
on the list in the
months.
next 2.5, 3
right, but
months.
they're in September and October and November and December, right? So, yeah, I do think we probably would have to take a look at what items are going to require maybe more discussion and maybe aren't as we're not as unified as a council on per se, but yeah, I get the idea that the 4th Tuesday and the 5th Tuesday are used. It's not as if those are vacation days for everybody, but I think we do have a lot to go through, and I'm just you asked for comments. My comment is I would make myself available the best I can, and I think there's an opportunity to put together everybody's calendar, throw out dates, and see where maybe we line up as 7, and see if those are opportune. And I don't know if other boards and commissions can also be shifted, if those are nights that maybe we can take, but maybe that's a bridge too far. Just try to think of ways we can do this.
Some of the sequencing, I'm going to get over my skis pretty quickly here, that's why our staff does the work they do, but some of the sequencing has to do with other factors. So for instance, the gaming issue. The gaming issue clearly affects our liquor licenses. Our liquor licenses all expire at a certain point in the year. You'd want to be issuing new licenses. There's a ramp up to that, having people understand what that means. There's sort of a backing up of stuff. Many of the things that we're talking about have elements of that to them. So if I'm not going to, this is an overstatement, but if you just passed on that until January, you'd be in a situation of trying to issue all these temporary licenses or have licenses change midstream. It becomes kind of a thing way beyond just the subject we're talking about.
Yeah.
So that's just another part of it. Leslie?
Yeah, I mean, similar to Commissioner Davenport, I don't plan on missing any meetings in the coming months, so perhaps my view is a bit skewed by that. But I think that given the amount of things that we want to get done, I think we need to move ahead, and I don't see the value to the residents in delaying it. I do understand that the conversations often lead to, a lot of good discussion, but we also just set a plan forth for residents, and I think, I don't know if I want to say it does a disservice, but it is, I'm not sure what it says to the residents to say we haven't, we can't even get consensus for the next 2 months, so we're just going to have to take a pause and cancel meetings. That doesn't feel good to me. So I'm kind of in the similar boat as Commissioner Gilmartin, that if, there are meetings where perhaps we are missing 2 people, maybe we do look that week to see what else we can do, or the following week, If I have to rearrange my schedule and miss a hockey practice, I'll do so. But I think that, these issues are too important, and if there really is a timeline here, then we need to be working within that timeline. I would love to see if there is a way that we could at least have one full conversation or get everyone's perspective at least on every issue throughout. We know we typically will discuss things at least twice, if not more. And so I would be hopeful that we would be able to get everybody's view on things and kind of see where they are, not just with the votes, but their perspectives. So we can get that to staff, but my preference would be not to push anything off. Thank you.
We talked about the timeline, and I think everybody was sort of feeling like they knew that the timeline wasn't going to be 2.5 years, right? It was going to likely be longer. So I wouldn't get too hung up on any particular committed timeline. What we've committed to doing is trying to work through this list as fast as we possibly can. I hear what you're saying, and that's why I'm bringing it up, because there actually wouldn't be a meeting in the next 2 months that we could do that. Get everybody's input. You know, I mean, what we've done in the past is try and manage these agendas where we would, you've seen weeks where we had like no agendas or we even canceled meetings because we didn't have one. Then we'd have a much bulkier agenda at a different point. That was to try and get everybody's inclusion. That's the thing that I'm hoping that we might do more of. Because to your point, I think people do want to hear, you know, they want us to make progress. They also want to hear what we all have to say on stuff. And we have one of those for the next 2.5 months.
So to clarify, I didn't necessarily mean everyone giving their input at the exact same meeting, but knowing that we discuss these things at least 2 or 3, at least 2 times. Hopefully then at that point, we would be able to get everybody's perspective within at least 1 of 2 of those meetings. I mean, similar to how, we know that there are a lot of other pressures kind of as to why we can't change meetings. I mean, we also kind of took that responsibility on as council members as well. And we know that we are always, have lives and are going to have to miss a couple, but I think we have to consider that side of it as well, that we did make this commitment to the community too, to kind of get things done in a timely way. So.
Before Greg's wanting to say something here, I got a question. I'll hang on 1 second. Dave, on the process for sort of the comp plan aspect of some of the work we anticipate, those aren't necessarily conversations that at this moment we intended to tee up as sort of first reading, second readings, right? They were sort of a continuing dialogue that we'd be 1 week and then we'd move on to the next week. So there wasn't necessarily in other words, a subject that's covered under that comp plan work might not necessarily get a 1 week, 2 week tee up.
Correct. We, at the front part of the comp plan and related items projects, we don't envision formalized votes on ordinances and motions, et cetera. What we envision is continual dialogue among the council members, which turns into informal direction. Maybe the best way to explain that is to talk about how we're envisioning the Fairview focus area implementation that's shown tentatively planned for September and October. We intend to go to the council with 1 or 2 conversations establishing the boundaries of the planning area and then getting council direction on the existing comp plan recommendations related to land use. So boundaries and land use recommendations, maybe 1 or 2 meetings. Once we have that, we intend to start talking about the rezoning in a rezoning framework discussion where the council would be giving us informal direction of what we should tee up for the Plan Commission in terms of a formal rezoning petition initiated by the village. So there's an example of probably 3, 4, 5 meetings maybe, don't know for sure, where the council's not actually voting on anything, just talking and then coming to consensus and giving staff direction. So that, I think that's on the front end of the comp plan related items, those types of meetings.
So if we kind of plowed forward, what would be really detrimental to that whole idea of plowing forward would be to revisit stuff later.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So, I mean, that's an important thing. The point of if people want to plow forward, the point of that is to actually accomplish stuff in a shorter period of time. You can't then 2 weeks later when somebody shows up say, hey, I want to go back to that conversation about uses and,
Right, and that's exactly where I was going to start, because it's one thing to miss a vote, but 95 to 99% of the time, we're taking unanimous votes, right? Now, video gaming maybe isn't going to be a unanimous vote, but most of the other stuff on that list, when it comes down to it, is going to be unanimous.
Good point.
The value, especially when we're talking about these visioning type projects, when you're talking about Fairview, when you're talking about the Main Street pedestrian safety project, you're talking about the budget, the comp plan, the value is in those discussions. The value is having the 7 of us looking at each other and saying, here's where I'm at, and the spark that ignites in one of our colleagues that then brings out a new comment, and the conversation shifts. These are the pieces of feedback that with Commissioner Tully or without Mayor Barnett, without that same dynamic, it changes. And whether you're circling back or whether you never get back to it, the community misses out. You know, we were all elected for, to provide a voice and a vote. But that voice is, I think, of paramount importance. And, we've talked a lot at the previous meeting about flexibility. And I think to become inflexible at this point, when it comes to scheduling and the scope of these discussions and the tenor of these discussions is misguided. And I'll own that, look, I'm going to miss the first 2 meetings of October because I'm going to be attending conferences and speaking at one of them. There's nothing I can do about it. It is what it is. And that's not a lack of commitment. That's needing to be in a different place. We have moved items around on agendas to accommodate vacation schedules, work schedules, concerts, all kinds of different things. These things happen, and it's important that we be able to roll with them and continue to do the work that the community has elected us to do.
I don't know if we're getting any real information that's useful to you, Dave. What do you think, Danny? I'll put you on the spot.
Well, I do agree with my fellow commissioners. I'd like to keep moving along too. I also, I'm going to be here, but I do agree also with what Commissioner Jose says, and because I've gotten a lot of valuable feedback from these conversations and have changed my mind through conversations with fellow council members. But I think it's kind of hard for me to process that last week we were all like, let's go, let's get all this stuff done, and now we're like pumping the brakes in the first week. So if those are the only 2 options on the table, I would prefer to, as Leslie said, we're going to have multiple conversations about these things. If I'm not here 1 week, hopefully I can get out what I want to say the next week. So I'd like to keep moving on these things. I think there's, 1 or 2 items up there that are going to be, as Commissioner Jose said, maybe contentious, but for the most part, I think we can have quality conversations, whether it's up here or with each other about most of these items more than one time.
Well, one of the things that we were just talking about, and Mike and I were looking at each other and making faces at, is that idea that I'll come back next week and get my say is probably not the case in a lot of these instances. I mean,
It's a loss, it's a deprivation of that voice.
it's not that you can't say something next week. Obviously, we'll all entertain what each other wants to say. But the idea that we're going to restart a conversation and bring somebody back in that wasn't there last week, that's not realistic. So somebody can say, I watched the meeting over the weekend and I don't agree with you guys, that's fine, but we're not going back to that conversation. Chris?
Yeah, so I guess I want to just try to frame this out. It sounds to me like that there's been 2 options put out there. The first option is plow ahead. If you're here, you're here. If you're not, you're not. The second option is slow down until we're all here. I think the third option is what I was trying to get at, is how do we get to where we can all be here in a way that is also flexible?
That's not really the option. See, one option is just plow ahead. The other option is manage the agenda. What I've been saying is manage the agendas like we have in the past. And that is a group trying to find times when people are all there and group them together. The reality of the list is that probably isn't, the net effect of that, at least between now and January 1st, is to probably cause us to be a little slower. It's not
The difference you're saying is we fix the item dates that we're going to focus on and come what may, versus look at the agenda items and adjust them based on what we think. Okay.
That's what
I don't see that much of, I don't see that much of a difference in that, to me. I think there's some accommodation there, but I still think you're pushing forward on, I mean, it's just reversing the order of some things. I think you do lose some of that discussion regardless. So, I don't know.
Well, and it's also, I think it's not quite accurate that there's not going to be things going on behind the scenes, too. I mean, we give a certain amount of direction, and then staff takes action based on that direction. They don't need us to say, gee, let's, make some progress on the comp plan consultant selection. They're going to put together an RFP and issue it and bring back ideas. And all of that happens whether the 7 of us are sitting here or not.
If I could help maybe frame up the conversation, I think move ahead, right, would be a change. In other words, don't try to manage agendas based on attendance. Just put them on as they would come up, right? That's the move ahead option. That's a different way than we've done it in the past. And I think I've heard 3 council members say, let's move ahead, because the likelihood of a council member missing both meetings on that topic is slim. So we might not have all 7 at every meeting, but that's the move ahead option, right? We're going to move ahead. We're not going to try to shuffle based on anticipated council attendance. The other option is to manage agendas such that we try to get 7 people here at key moments, right? This is what we've been doing for years. Here's the challenge, and why I think the mayor wanted to bring this up. Because of the combination of the extensive workload and the nature of that workload, and the unusual amount of anticipated council absences, the managed agendas, if we don't try to schedule special meetings, will be in November. We'll be at November 14th before we start any meaningful discussion.
Right.
That's what I want to make sure we're saying. If we want to manage around, like if we want to do what we've done in the past and still move forward, we will be in a situation where we're trying to schedule special meetings in October and November for sure. That is also a change because we traditionally have not had a lot of success in doing that. It takes more effort than one would think to try to rearrange everybody else's schedule and the rest of the village meeting schedule, because we have a policy and a practice that if the council is meeting, no other boards and commissions will meet at the same night, because then you're forcing a resident to choose which one of the meetings, right? And so the 4th Tuesday is already a Human Service Commission meeting, right? And there's other meetings. So that's to Commissioner Gilmartin's point. I want to make sure we're clear. If we're going to stick with our current practice of managing around planned absences, but only meeting on the normal schedule, that will slow us down. That will be November 14th. Like, we won't take a lot of those things, right, until we're all here in person. If you want to manage for attendance and still move ahead, we're going to have to be trying to schedule additional meetings, which traditionally just has been a little challenging.
Well,
So just an idea, guys, we got 9/19, there's going to be 5 of us here. On 10/10, there's going to be 5 of us here. On 11/7, there's going to be either 5 or 6 of us here. So we're not talking about one person missing occasionally. We're talking about like every couple of weeks, having way less than our normal crew. And so you wouldn't talk about trying to do the residents, do right by the residents. Yeah, it'd be great if the right by the residents was we're all going to be here every week. That's fine. But having 5 of us decide what the uses in the Fairview Avenue district ought to be, that's not right by the residents, not by a long shot. Leslie, sure.
I mean, so then can we perhaps at least have, even if we, because we know there are going to be some days that are going to be slightly meatier than others, so perhaps leave the ones where there are only going to be 5 of us out and at least prioritize 6 of us being here. And I say that just because you also never know what's going to come up in the next 4 months. I mean, we unfortunately lost a council member for a pretty long period of time last council unexpectedly. And that voice was missing for a period of time. It was, traumatic in addition to that. But we are never going to be able to guarantee that we're going to have all 7 of us here. And so I think at least if we can say there are 6 of us here, and we know that we all kind of have back and forth with staff, if somebody feels like they want to share information, we can call each other one-on-one, and then, maybe share some of those perspectives and conversations up here. Perhaps we can get, a better discussion that way. But I think that waiting until November 14th to have any meaty discussions does a disservice. So I think we either have to be willing to open our calendars and do special meetings, which I'm willing to do, or, you know, maybe just try and prioritize those meetings where we're going to have 6.
Mike?
So I just, you know, I'm willing to be flexible, for sure, whatever we need to do. If we set up additional meetings, I would find some way to make that work in my schedule. But I'm the rookie here. I did serve for 12 years on the District 99 School Board, and while I really appreciate, you know, the idea and the valuing of every, you know, getting all the voices heard, you know, once again, you know, this is what I signed up for. These are the meetings that I've got to attend, and if I can't be there, you know, the onus is on me to make sure that the other members have some idea of maybe where I stand on these things, to share those thoughts, you know, in advance of the meeting. But I certainly wouldn't expect things to be working around us. The quorum requirement is 4 people, and I think it's unreasonable to expect, really, I mean, I've actually been really impressed. I mean, we've had a lot of meetings where all 7 of us are here, and it really speaks to the commitment of all the commissioners. So I really appreciate that. But you know, in this day and age, I'm sure that there's going to be some things. You know, I'm fortunate. I'm just next few months, I'm clean, right? But no doubt there'll be some meetings next year that I may have to miss because of something that I'm doing as well. And you know, I don't expect there to be some rearranging of things because I'm not here. So that's been my experience in the past in my other service, and that's my expectation going forward.
I think what I'm hearing here is nobody really wants to wait till November 14th to have a meeting, and then
That's right.
and then not have another one until December, because the next 2 weeks in November aren't clean either. So that's not a real straight answer, because it's a kind of an impossible list. But I think Leslie's point of, you know, trying to identify where we can get 6 people, and if we think there's a particular issue that demands 7, then we'll have to ask each other about special meetings. Just remember, everybody's sitting up here on September 12th saying, I'm up for a special meeting. Yeah, what day? What time? We don't know. So, I mean, we did one, yes, we did one recently. We also, over the last 15 years, have done precious few because of that. So we'll try, and I'm sure that we'll try. I'm sure everybody up here will try. Just, it's not as easy as saying, well, I'm committed, so I'll do it. Do you feel like you got enough to take a next step?
Take a next step, yes, there'll be more conversations, and we'll be working collaboratively. Look, we'll work like we always do among staff and council members, collaboratively, flexible, and if we miss some expectations here or there, just get some feedback, and we'll try to make sure we're going where the council wants us to go.
One of the things, and I mean, there's not going to be zero agenda management going forward, right? So one of the things that will be more important maybe than before is to try and keep people meaning me and Dave, appraised of when absences are expected. You know, historically, we just haven't worried about that because we've had enough sprint capacity in the production that we could manage it, right? And we don't now. So it's going to be important to try and keep that in front of people with some warning. Okay?
Okay.
All right, anybody else got anything they want to kick around on this? Okay. All right, wasn't that exciting, guys? I appreciate everybody's indulgence in that. The point here is that we're all trying to figure out how to do this as well as we can, with as many people as we can, as many voices as we can. That's the goal. So I'm worried about that and trying to make sure we're all focused and trying to do our best to make that actually happen. All right, item 5, minutes of previous council meetings. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Previous council minutes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Item 6, public comments. This is the portion of our meeting where we take public comment on items not on tonight's agenda. If you've got something you want to tell us about, please come on down to the podium.
Good evening. I'm Warner Kiunke, and I've been here the past several meetings to talk about diversity. And I'll give you a little bit of my history in a little while, and then we'll talk about it further. But I've basically come out of retirement to deal with the issue of diversity because of the comments that have been made at the library about diversity, the LGBT community, race, and so forth. And in terms of my history, I was born in post-World War II Germany, and we moved to this country when I was about 6 years old. Under Hitler, there was little pushback against anti-Semitism, against the Eastern Europeans, and the LGBT community. Many of those individuals ended up in concentration camps, and there was not a lot of pushback. When we came to this country, the first things we were introduced to was Jim Crow. Then, as I became of age, with the support of my parents and with my history, I got very much involved with civil rights. And I have been involved with civil rights most of my life. I have worked on the west side of Chicago for 20 years. 15 of those years have been in the Austin community. And a part of it is because diversity is one of the passions that I have because of my history. When we came to this country, it was the first time we ever saw running water, because after the war, we had to share an apartment with another family. In this country, there was somebody who opened up their doors to us, and this was in the Rogers Park community, which is a predominantly Jewish community. We lived there for 6 months until my parents were able to get themselves established and we were able to fund a home. We have now lived in Downers Grove for about 5 years, and we found the community to be very friendly and accepting of me and my family. But a part of that is because I am also white. According to the 2000 census, whatever it was, Downers Grove, I believe, is 82% white, and the 18% identify themselves as non-whites, and there's a great mixture in there in terms of African Americans, Hispanics, Asians, etc. Comments at the library board have focused on minorities and the LGBT community. The pushback has come a lot of times from family members who have fought back against what some of the people are saying openly at the library board meetings, where they have a child who became gay, and how helpful it was to have the literature and the support of the library and other people in the community on that. But there is a significant pushback. My question is, in terms of the community, for some of the comments that have been made publicly at the library, and I know some have also been made at the schools, where is the pushback from the community? Is the 82% pushing back against those people? I ask the question to you as a city council. If you were a minority, and that includes race, religious, ethnic, sexual orientation, etc., how would you feel with the following public comments that were made at the library board meetings? One comment was, white-centered patrons of the library must be forced to embrace the interests of neglected, historically marginalized individuals. White people being forced to address that because it's something that may be in the literature or a holiday. Also, I just saw a poster for the basketball team at Downers Grove South High School. 5 persons on that basketball team are African American. Let me read the following quote from another library board meeting. A lot of people in the community think equity is a good thing because they think equity means equality. It's the opposite of equality. It is giving preference to certain categories of people. And here's the part. In our schools, preference is given to minorities. White students are not given opportunities. And everything is getting dumbed down. So it's tough to take. And that's what that person said. If you were a minority, how would you feel? Would Downers Grove be that welcoming community that I felt? Where is the pushback? But more, where is the pushback from the community? Where is the support for minorities and inclusion in community activities? And I would appreciate it, if the questions would begin some kind of a discussion. That's what I'm hoping for. Because diversity with my background is the passion that I've had all my life. Thank you.
Thank you. Others?
Janet Wingham, a longtime resident of Downers Grove. First of all, I want to thank the Public Works Department. I got a knock on my door this morning around 9 o'clock to say that there was a water main break just across the street, and they'd be turning off the water, and they fixed it in very quick amount of time. It did take a long period of time, but they were kind enough to turn the water back on during the middle of it, so we had a little respite, and they did a nice job. So I appreciate that very much. In respect to the plan of your organization of addressing the items that you're going to address, I do have a concern, and if you want resident feedback, here you get it. You seem to be emphasizing speed over quality. I think that it is very important to have all of you discuss all of the items in public discussion for the reasons that you mentioned, all of you. They're good reasons. And I would encourage you not to go forward without all of the input that you can get. I do have a question about how this process works, because I admittedly have not been quite as observant as I am now. But where does the actual discussion and planning of what things are going to look like occur? It doesn't occur here in these meetings, because by the time it gets to these meetings, the die is cast. Where does the actual conversation about what the Main Street pedestrian and vehicle safety project is going to look like, where you're going to put the whatevers you're going to put in, how much you're going to widen the sidewalks, where are those decisions made? Maybe, I mean, I know this isn't a question and answer, but if I can take that up with someone at another time, whatever the protocol is, I'd be happy to follow up. I don't feel unsafe walking down Main Street on the sidewalks. I don't know why. I actually don't know why that is part of the conversation. But I'd like to know what the end result and how the process is going to change to the look of the downtown. The other items, Fairview Avenue, very important. I drive through there. It isn't my neighborhood, but clearly it needs attention, and I would support a lot of attention to that particular project. Video gaming, you already know, I don't think it's a good look, and I don't think it needs to be here, but you'll have well, there'll be opportunities to talk about that more, I'm sure. So I guess my question is, where does the public get to know how these things are shaping? Because, and who's, part of your back and forth conversations before it gets cast in Mylar or whatever the presentations are? Is that not possible? Is that not part of the open meetings and opportunity for the public to give input? I don't know. Who do I ask if I need to make an appointment with somebody to have a conversation about that? It's an education for me. I'd be very interested in knowing these things. Who do I ask? Nobody. You're not even going to tell me who to ask?
When you get done,
All right.
I'll touch on some of that.
All right, that's fair, and I'm pretty much done. Thank you. Oh, and I apologize for standing. I've got a crimp in my leg that just jumped out and grabbed me, so I'm standing.
Anyone else on subjects not on tonight's agenda? All right, let me take a moment to just describe a little bit more of the process. In all the time I've been sitting up here, one of the things that is constantly said is, it seems like everything's a done deal when it gets to you. That's because people often, frankly, miss a lot of what goes into that, up to that point. I'll take Main Street as an example. Main Street, of course, isn't a done deal. It's going to be on a future agenda item, which we will be discussing here. But there have been, Dave will fix my math, but there have been probably about a half a dozen meetings on this subject already, starting years ago with District 99. There were public open houses, several mock-up design concepts thrown about. There have been a couple meetings at this body. There are still some to come. There's a neighborhood meeting that's scheduled. It's on the face of our website. And then there'll be multiple meetings here. And so how does someone get to know about that process? They follow it all the way along. We do our best, and it is never enough to tell people about meetings. Whether they're in our newsletter or they're on our social media or they're on our website, we're constantly announcing that stuff. Seldom do we have the kind of input we might hope for, but it is out there. So what the resident should do is try and stay engaged, and when I say try and stay engaged, it means follow these meetings and follow those agendas and follow what's coming up. It is all put out there. Main Street, how did it get to looking like it's looking? Well, started with some renderings from a consultant to District 99 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Yeah, Mike, you can probably help me with that. And there were public meetings at District 99 facilities for those. Then there were public meetings here for those. Then we've run it through our system, which means we're about to have another public neighborhood meeting, and then there'll be more meetings here. There's nothing set until we cast a vote on it. But all of these go through a similar process, some more, some less than others. Take gaming as another one. Gaming is going to come before us. There will be at least 2 meetings here before a vote is taken on that, maybe more. There have already been 6 or so over the last 2 councils on the subject. It's just a matter of staying engaged. It really is a matter of staying engaged. And when I say engaged, again, follow our social media, follow our website, follow these meetings. Anytime anyone has a question, emailing the village council, those questions will get answered. All of us respond in various ways and in various levels of detail, but none of us is trying to avoid a conversation about any of the details. So I hope that helps, and I hope everybody watching and everybody here tonight continues to do just that, just to stay engaged. We've said it after our meetings next door that we're thrilled everybody's here and paying attention and participating, and that's it. That's the process. There's no magic behind the curtain. There's no grand wizard back there. It just is what it is. So, all right. Is there a motion for a consent agenda?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously as well. Item 8 is our active agenda. Active agendas are items on which we plan to take action this evening. That means these items have been discussed at least once prior, sometimes multiple times prior. The first item is an ordinance concerning a sales tax rebate agreement. Is there a motion?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt an ordinance approving a sales tax rebate agreement between the Village of Downers Grove and Downers Grove Cars LLC, doing business as Genesis of Downers Grove, as presented.
Second.
Are there any comments or questions from the audience on this item? Comments or questions from the council? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That too is unanimous. Is there another resolution concerning a sales tax agreement?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt a resolution assigning the sales tax rebate agreement between the Village of Downers Grove and Downers Grove Imports LTD to Castle Motors of Downers Grove LLC, Castle Cars of Downers Grove LLC, and Castle Imports of Downers Grove LLC as presented.
Second.
Comments or questions from the audience on this item? Comments or questions from the council? Just as a way of sort of mini recap, these sales tax rebate agreements, generally speaking, are structured in such a way so that there is a baseline amount of money expected in sales, and above and beyond that baseline, a portion of the sales tax collected is rebated. Generally, that's the structure. What we just did here tonight, or about to finish doing, is Pugie Motors of Downers Grove, which is Volkswagen, Mazda, Hyundai, and soon-to-be Genesis, recently sold that business, and so we extended those agreements and restruck those agreements with a new ownership group. This essentially is causing that to happen. So with that, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That too passes unanimously. Item 9 is our first reading. The first reading agenda portion of our meeting is where we take up items sometimes for the first time, sometimes for the second, third, or sixth, but items on which we do not plan to take formal action tonight. If you're looking at our agenda, first reading items, it's really long. We are going to talk about this generally as a group. These are building code amendments. Stan?
Thank you, Mayor Burnett. Good evening, Mayor and council members. As the mayor said, we'll go through these quickly. All the codes, there's a whole bunch of them that we're going to propose to adopt. These are our current adopted codes. They're generally the 2015 family of the International Code Council codes. We're moving to the 2021 code on the majority of these items here before you tonight. As you'll notice in both of these slides, there's 3 state mandated codes that we follow: the plumbing code, accessibility code, and the energy conservation code. Those are from the state that we have to follow those. Building code background, we last adopted the 2015 set of codes in August of 17. Generally, the village skips a code cycle. They update them every 3 years. So that's why we're moving to the 2021 ICC set of codes. Our schedule, we've started a review early this year. We had a public open house in July where we had 25 people attend that meeting. So that was open to builders, homeowners, and contractors so that they could see some of these highlighted changes. We're meeting with you tonight, and as we move forward, our proposed effective date, assuming these codes are adopted, will be January 1st of 2024. These are our goals, generally. First one of the foremost is protect the health, safety, and welfare of anybody who occupies the building in Downers Grove, so residents, customers, business owners. I'm going to highlight a few of the changes that are coming up. The first one is to the International Residential Code. The village currently has an amendment that does not require fire sprinklers in new single-family homes. As proposed, the village would not require fire sprinklers in new single-family homes moving forward as well. With some of the changes, the codes are getting a little more sustainable, a little more environmentally focused here. So one of those is some codes on building integrated photovoltaic systems. So that's solar panels, sort of in roof panels and shingles. Also, it talks a little bit about shipping containers and some tiny house regulations, and then a solar-ready zone for new single-family houses where if someone would put solar in later, there's an opportunity for them to do that. With the International Building Code, so distilleries and breweries are going to be classified as less hazardous now as they become more of a gathering space for people to enjoy a beverage out. Additionally, there's some updated heavy timber regulations. I can never find my way out of an escape room or puzzle room, so these doors can now be locked, but upon a fire alarm or sprinkler, those doors are automatically unlocked. I would just ask the person to unlock the door for me. But that's probably a personal thing on my part. International Fire Code, so we've consolidated our fire code requirements into the IFC. Again, probably one thing is we're prohibiting indoor fireworks and pyrotechnics, something the fire department is concerned about. National Life Safety Code, we're updating this to the 2015 code. This would match the Illinois Office of the State Fire Marshal's code, so we would be consistent with them on those codes that we enforce. National Electric Code, this will move to the 2020 code. NEC is on a different dates and everything, so surge protection devices required, Emergency disconnects are going to be on the outside of any new single-family dwelling now. That's mostly for fire department emergency personnel to be able to shut off power to the entire building. A national swimming pool and spa code, where we're going to propose an amendment to require safety barrier fence around all pools. Right now, code allows you to have an automatic pool cover, but we think a pool fence would be better than just an automatic pool cover. These three codes, there's not really any significant changes. I know everybody loves to talk fuel, gas, and mechanical code, but there's not much significant changes going on in those guys. State mandated codes, there's no proposed changes in the state energy conservation code, accessibility code. The village is proposing to change a couple of amendments to the plumbing code. One of them is to require the water service pipes to be 66 inches in depth. State is 60. 66 is our standard public works detail. And then to disallow Pikes tubing as water distribution piping. I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody would have. If I can't answer them, I'd be happy to jot them down and answer them for you later. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Stan. Generally speaking, what this is, the event we're going through here is adoption of some international codes and then adding local amendments if we felt necessary. That's generally the process. Any comments or questions from the audience on this item? Comments or questions from the council? Chris?
I just, on the pool fence requirement, I just want to make sure I understand. We currently do not require fences around pools?
The existing code allows you, if you have an automatic safety barrier, that you do not need a fence around it. We find a lot of people do put a fence up. We just want to amend it to require them to have a fence up.
Okay. And you stole my escape room joke. Nothing further.
I apologize
Well
about
played.
that, Commissioner.
Well played, sir.
Greg?
Thank you, Mayor. This went nowhere in 2017 when I was in favor of it, and I imagine it's going to go nowhere now, but I'd like to see us keep the requirement that fire sprinklers be installed, or be required to be installed in new single-family homes. Excuse me. It increases safety, obviously, for the resident, and for our first responders at a marginal cost. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Leslie?
Yeah, I will echo Commissioner Jose, and I would also be in favor of keeping that one. I know I asked a few questions when we had our one-on-one calls with staff, and it does appear that it's a fairly minimal cost up front. It could potentially save homeowners money on their insurance policies as well. I know, in the discussion, it's typically older homes that we do find, are more prone to, house fires. But one day down the road, all of these homes are going to be older homes, right? And so if we can equip them with something that is going to potentially be a benefit for life safety, I think we should do it. So I would also agree that we should keep that in. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Danny, Mike? Mike?
Sure, I've got a couple.
Sure.
I appreciate, so actually want to just compliment the staff for putting this together. This will make us about as current as we can possibly be. And I work in a lot of different jurisdictions with my architecture work, and this would be, the most current that I would see anywhere. So I love the fact that my town is leading the way there. I am actually opposed to the idea of disallowing the PEX for the plumbing code. That's not something we had been doing. It's not something that's a change. While I do understand that there's some negatives to PEX, as we saw in some of the commentary that was provided, some of the positives are that it's less cost and that you get better water pressure and you have a higher burst strength, so less prone to freezing problems. And that's probably the reason why most of the country is using PEX. It's kind of a unique thing to the Chicago area, as is a few other things I won't go into. And then regarding the fire sprinkler system, I've spent a little bit of time re-examining my position on this as well, but I remain opposed to making this a requirement. It's not a minimal cost, and it's true that and it's not just installation, but also maintenance along the way, right? But so much of what's in our codes has been put in place to make our houses safer. So a new house today, we're putting 5/8-inch drywall type X underneath the stairways. We're fire stopping any opening. There's draft stopping requirements in attics that get too large. There's a number of things in the code that are there to address fire safety. And the reason the older homes are more susceptible to burning is because they don't have those things. We did not used to require all those things years ago. Fire separation between an attached garage and a house, and that we have a spring-loaded hinge or something to make sure that door closes. Right, those things were in the codes back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, and so if we could magically wave a wand and put fire sprinklers in all of our older homes, I think that would be really awesome, but that's not practical. And whereas putting them in new homes, their effectiveness, the risk versus the cost, it just doesn't add up, I don't believe. So I appreciate staff's suggestion that we leave that out. Thank you.
Go ahead. Thanks, Mayor. Since Mike touched on the magic topic of PEX, I couldn't disagree with you more, Mike.
Okay.
As it says here in response to the council questions, it's inferior to copper because it's less durable and has a shorter lifespan. The chlorine in the water inside PEX pipe speeds up the failure of it. It's vulnerable to rodent attacks, any number of different things. I mean, we're talking about a pipe that's one step up maybe from a garden hose. I simply think I can't imagine why we wouldn't ban its use. Thank you, Mayor.
Sure. Just have to rebut. I think that's a mischaracterization.
Well, I know 6,200 plumbers that would agree with me, so.
Well, so I won't go there. That was part of my commentary earlier on. So I'll just say that it's in the state plumbing code as something that is allowable. And I actually know that when the plumbing code was adopted, the idea that jurisdictions with home rule authority weren't supposed to be able to make changes to the code, actually. So, for instance, and this is something that I know DuPage County and other places pursued and have made it possible for us to opt out. But we certainly, so we're going to be seeing a new energy code very soon. We could have seen it this month. I'm not sure where the state's at on it, but that was the last guidance I had gotten. And we will not be allowed to take things out of the, energy code. We'll be allowed to make things more stringent. So I'll just say the state plumbing code, they've already said this is an acceptable thing to do, and I would have to see. I didn't question the data or the statements that were made that you just read, but I'd want to see that the data to back those statements up, because like I said, most of the country is using PEX. It is a superior product, just like any product though. I mean, I could go through more of the negatives with copper if you wanted. Some people get concerned about the quality of the water. Somehow maybe using a type of plastic is not as good as copper, but the water, by the time it gets to your house, hasn't been going through copper all the way, along the way to get to your house, and doesn't magically get better because you're using copper in the house. So I think the pluses outweigh the negatives. This just provides the residents the option to use PEX if they want. I can tell you that 99% of the time it's copper right now, even with that, because this is something that is allowed. Our current code is allowing the PEX. So people right now are choosing to use copper. I just think that we should preserve the opportunity for those who might want to do something differently to do that, as the state has put in their code. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. One of the challenges, of course, with 7 of us sitting up here is that we all have different experiences and different experience levels. So it's part of our job to figure out when and how to appropriately inject those into what we're doing. Any other questions or comments? I'm generally in agreement with what's been presented tonight. I do have a list of some kind of more clerical sort of questions, which I'm going to circulate to staff and ask them to circulate to everybody, but they're not really policy things. They're like questions of history, like how did we get to this point and why kind of thing. But none of it affects the potential adoption of the codes, which I intend to vote to support. Anyone else? Dave?
Thank you. That ends our first reading tonight, Mayor, and I do not have a manager's report, which is next on the agenda. Thank you.
Enza, is there an attorney's report?
There is, Mayor. There's quite a long list of ordinances. I'm here to present tonight 11 of them, but they are all related to the adoption of the building and fire codes that Stan just went through, so they will all be on next week's active agenda. Thank you, Mayor.
Can I get a motion requiring the village attorney to read those?
So moved. Hey, Rosa do all that reading.
Yeah, I know, right?
Bows out with a bunch of lists. Right.
Item 12 is council member reports. This is a portion of the meeting where council members report out on things that are going on in the community that they're alert to, or other groups that they're interacting with and they think the residents should know about. So we'll start with Commissioner Gilmartin. Chris?
Yeah, I just actually want to echo the same as one of our residents, Janet, mentioned. Just kudos to Public Works. I happen to live in that same stretch where the water main broke and the communication was super fast. I think they actually had to come back. There was an issue, and we got our showers in, and all is good. So just great job, great communication, and yeah, it was just a great experience when we had water rushing down our street. It was super quick. We appreciate that.
Greg?
No report, Mayor, thank you.
Mike?
Just personal note, I just got back from Colorado, beautiful place, but I have to tell you, when you're away from all this green and you come back to it, it's really, you appreciate it. So Downers Grove is a beautiful place. I'm so glad to be here. That's all, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Danny?
No report. Thank you, Mayor.
Leslie?
Just want to thank everyone for their support of the Grove Foundation's annual golf outing that was on Saturday. It was a huge success, and it was beautiful weather. I also want to point out that if you want to support the library, the Downers Grove Public Library Foundation is hosting a Celebrate the Freedom to Read, a banned books masquerade fundraiser event on October 3rd from 7 to 10 p.m. at Skeleton Key Brewery. I know it's the same day as a council meeting, so if you're going to have to miss this, exciting dialogue, at least you can miss it to support our Downers Grove Public Library. So you can go to dgplfoundation.org for more information. Thanks.
Thank you. I don't have any real report, except that I want to say thank you to Commissioner Jose, who covered for me this weekend. I appreciate that. Fine Arts Fair and the Grove Foundation golf outing seem to always be on the same weekend, and it's frankly a lot of fun going from one to the other. This weekend I was out of town, which was also a lot of fun, but I appreciate you covering. Thank you.
Happy to.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all, and good night.